12:37 p.m., January 12, 2026. Apure State, southwestern Venezuela, 18 miles northeast of the Colombian border. Dense triple canopy jungle. Afternoon heat, 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity 87%. Visibility under tree cover, 40 meters maximum. 8 U.S. Navy SEALs, callsign Grizzly Team, moving single file through elephant grass and mahogany thickets. Mission: intelligence gathering on Venezuelan military movements near disputed border zones. Silent insertion 72 hours prior via MH-47G Chinook from forward staging in Colombia. No contact. No compromise. Exfiltration scheduled for 1800 hours, 6 clicks north at designated LZ Alpha. Team leader, Lieutenant Commander Jason Rourke. Point man, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Trent. Radio man, Petty Officer First Class Kevin Hayes. 7 others, weapons suppressed, night optics stowed, moving tactically through terrain they'd rehearsed for weeks. At 12:37 p.m., Hayes detected movement. Hand signal raised. The team froze. 200 meters west, vehicle noise. Diesel engines. Multiple contacts. Then voices. Spanish. Venezuelan Army patrol. Rourke made the call, hold position, let them pass. The patrol didn't pass. At 12:39 p.m. it opened fire. Automatic weapons. RPK light machine guns. AK-103 rifles. Sustained burst shredding foliage. Rounds snapping through branches. Dirt geysers erupting around the SEAL positions. This wasn't a patrol stumbling onto them by accident. This was an ambush. The Venezuelans knew exactly where Grizzly Team was. This wasn't a drill. Rourke keyed his radio. Grizzly to Warhammer, troops in contact. Grid November Victor 4-7-2-8, 8 friendly, estimate 40 enemy, taking effective fire, request immediate close air support. 4 seconds of static. Then the response from JSOC Forward Command Curaçao, Grizzly Warhammer copies all. Stand by. Help is coming. But 18 miles inside hostile territory, surrounded, outgunned 5-1 with Venezuelan reinforcements inbound, help had to come fast. The Venezuelans made 5 fatal mistakes. They assumed the SEAL team was isolated with no immediate support within range. They believed their ambush force, 42 soldiers, 3 BTR-80 armored personnel carriers, coordinated from a nearby command post, was overwhelming enough to capture or kill the Americans before extraction was possible. They thought Washington's rules of engagement would prevent strikes on Venezuelan soil. They had no idea how fast U.S. retaliation protocols could activate. And they never considered what targeting their command structure would cost them. What happened in the next 52 minutes didn't just save 8 SEALs. It obliterated the Venezuelan military command network that authorized the ambush. This is that story. If accountability like this needs to reach more people, hit that like button right now. Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro had become a pariah state. Economy collapsed, population fleeing, military propped up by Russian advisors and Cuban intelligence officers. For 18 months, Caracas accused Washington of plotting regime change. Border skirmishes with Colombia increased. Venezuelan patrols penetrated disputed zones. Provocations escalated. U.S. Special Operations teams had conducted reconnaissance missions along the border for 9 months, monitoring arms shipments, tracking cartel regime collusion, gathering intelligence on Russian and Iranian military presence. All missions, low visibility, no contact protocols. Grizzly Team's operation was routine until someone leaked their insertion. Cuban intelligence. Russian signals intercept. Regime informant inside Colombian forward staging. Didn't matter how. At 12:37 p.m., Venezuelan forces knew Grizzly Team's location within 200 meters. The ambush was pre-planned. Command authorization came from 10 separate Venezuelan military command centers coordinating across Apure, Barinas, and Taquira states. Installations responsible for border operations, intelligence coordination, and regime protection forces. These weren't frontline combat units. These were the brain. And now they'd crossed a line Washington had drawn in classified directives. Any deliberate engagement of U.S. Special Operations forces will trigger immediate decapitation strikes on hostile command infrastructure. Maduro's generals thought it was a bluff. At 12:43 p.m. they learned otherwise. 12:40 p.m. Grizzly Team returned fire. Suppressed 416 Hong Kong dollars rifles. Controlled bursts. Chief Trent dropped 2 Venezuelan soldiers at 80 meters. Another SEAL, Petty Officer Daniels, took a round through the shoulder. Bleeding, still functional, pulled behind hard cover. Rourke assessed. Encircled on 3 sides, BTR-80s advancing from the west, heavier weapons inbound. The team had maybe 6 minutes before being overrun. Hayes transmitted again. Warhammer Grizzly. Contact sustained, 1 wounded, BTRs moving in, need air now. Warhammer responded. Grizzly, package inbound. Danger close authorized. Mark your POS. Hayes activated infrared strobe, invisible to naked eye, bright as a beacon to airborne sensors. At 12:41 p.m., 2 AC-130J Ghostryder gunships, callsigns Reaper 1 and Reaper 2, already airborne 90 miles north over Colombia on pre-planned patrol, altered course at full throttle. Time to target, 7 minutes. But 7 minutes was an eternity in combat. The Venezuelan BTR-80s closed to 120 meters. 14.5 millimeters heavy machine guns opened up. Trees exploded. A SEAL took shrapnel to the leg. Another, Petty Officer Jackson, returned fire with an M320 grenade launcher. The 40 millimeters round impacted a BTR's turret. No penetration, but the crew buttoned up. At 12:42 p.m., Venezuelan reinforcements arrived. 2 more trucks, 18 soldiers, and 82 millimeters mortar team setting up 400 meters south. The trap was tightening. Drop retribution in the comments if you see where this is going. 12:43 p.m. JSOC Forward Command, Curaçao, erupted into controlled chaos. Screens displayed Grizzly Team's beacon. Real-time imagery from an MQ-9 Reaper drone orbiting 18,000 feet overhead. Thermal signatures, 8 Americans clustered in defensive position, 40-plus hostiles closing in. Commander, Special Operations Task Force South, Captain Elena Voss, issued immediate orders, execute Scorpion Protocol. All assets weapons free. Target Venezuelan command infrastructure per pre-authorized strike package Delta 7. Scorpion Protocol, pre-planned retaliation for attacks on U.S. SOF teams. 10 Venezuelan command centers already identified, coordinates locked, weapons assigned, waiting for authorization. At 12:44 p.m., that authorization transmitted. From Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, 4 F-15E Strike Eagles scrambled, callsigns Venom 1 through Venom 4. Each loaded with GBU-38JDM precision bombs and AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles. Time to Venezuelan airspace, 19 minutes. From Soto Cano Air Base, Honduras, 2 B-1B Lancers launched, callsigns Hammer 1 and Hammer 2. Combined payload, 48 JSSMER cruise missiles. Time to launch. Point, 16 minutes. From USS Carney, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer operating in the southern Caribbean. Authorization to fire Tomahawk cruise missiles. Targeting coordinates uploaded. Launch sequence initiated. And from undisclosed forward positions inside Colombia, under classified agreements never publicly acknowledged, U.S. Army H-64E Apache gunships spun up rotors. The response machine was awake. 12:45 p.m. The AC-130J Ghostriders crossed into Venezuelan airspace at 12,000 feet. Reaper 1, piloted by Major Kyle Sanders, established contact. Grizzly Reaper 1 on station. We have visual on hostiles. Engaging. The Ghostriders' 105mm howitzer opened fire. The first round, high explosive, GPS guided, detonated 15 meters from a Venezuelan BTR-80. The armored vehicle flipped sideways, turret sheared off, crew killed instantly. 3 seconds later, the 30mm GU-23 autocannon engaged. A stream of armor-piercing rounds ripped through the second BTR. Ammunition cooked off inside. Secondary explosions. Fire. Screaming. The third BTR reversed hard, attempting to retreat into tree cover. Reaper 2 locked it with infrared targeting and fired a Hellfire missile. The BTR disintegrated. Venezuelan soldiers scattered. Some fired blindly skyward with AK-103s, useless against an aircraft at 12,000 feet. Others ran south, abandoning equipment, abandoning wounded. At 12:47 p.m., the 82mm mortar team attempted a fire mission. They never got a round off. Reaper 1's 105mm howitzer struck their position directly. The mortar tube cartwheeled through the air. Bodies thrown 30 feet. The ambush force collapsed in under 4 minutes. Type yes if you want to see the command centers hit. 12:48 p.m. Grizzly Team held position, weapons trained outward. Wounded treated with combat gauze and tourniquets. Hayes transmitted, Warhammer, Grizzly. Immediate threat neutralized. Request medevac for 2 wounded. Warhammer, Grizzly medevac inbound. Stay put. You're about to see a show. At 12:49 p.m., 2 U.S. Army H-64E Apache gunships, callsigns Viper 1 and Viper 2, crossed the border from Colombia. Their mission wasn't just rescue support. It was cleanup. The Apaches located fleeing Venezuelan soldiers 600 meters south, regrouping near trucks. Viper 1 engaged with 30mm chain gun. 8 hostiles down in 15 seconds. Viper 2 fired 2 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles at the trucks. Both destroyed. No prisoners. No retreat. At 12:51 p.m., a UH-60M Black Hawk, callsign Dustoff 3, configured for medevac, arrived at LZ Alpha with 4-man PJ team aboard. Grizzly Team moved north under Apache overwatch, carrying their wounded. Extraction complete by 12:56 p.m. 8 SEALs recovered. 2 wounded, stable. Venezuelan ambush force, destroyed. But the real retaliation was just beginning. 12:53 p.m. USS Carney launched 6 BGM-109 Tomahawk cruise missiles from vertical launch cells. Targets: Venezuelan command centers in Barinas and San Cristobal. Flight time, 12 minutes. At 12:58 p.m., the F-15E Strike Eagles entered Venezuelan airspace from the north, flying at 32,000 feet. No Venezuelan radar detected them. Air defense systems were antiquated, poorly maintained, crews undertrained. Venom 1 and Venom 2 targeted command centers in Apure state. Each released 2 GBU-38 dams. At 1:02 p.m. the bombs impacted. Apure Regional Military Command, Guastualito. 2 direct hits. Headquarters building collapsed. Communications tower severed. Command staff, 11 officers, 24 enlisted, killed or trapped in rubble. San Fernando de Apure Forward Operations Center. 2 bombs. Command bunker penetrated. Interior destroyed. Backup generators offline. Venom 3 and Venom 4 struck Barinas state targets. Barinas Military Intelligence Coordination Hub. 3 dams. Total destruction. Archives incinerated. Intel officers eliminated. At 1:05 p.m. the Tomahawk cruise missiles arrived. 1:05 p.m. 6 Tomahawk cruise missiles screamed across western Venezuela at 550 miles per hour, hugging terrain, invisible to antiquated radar. First impact, Tequira State Border Defense Command, San Cristobal. The missile punched through reinforced concrete, detonated inside the operations center. The building's north wall blew outward. Command personnel, 19 officers coordinating border operations, killed instantly. Communications arrays on the roof collapsed inward. Second impact, 4 seconds later. Tequira Communications Relay Station, 4 kilometers north of San Cristobal. Direct hit on satellite uplink tower. Secondary explosions from backup power generators. Regional military communications across the entire western frontier, severed. Third and fourth impacts, Barinas State Regional Command Annex. 2 Tomahawks, 5 seconds apart. The first missile destroyed the administration building. The second hit the underground command bunker access point. Blast wave collapsed ventilation shafts. Personnel trapped inside, 31. No survivors recovered. Fifth impact, Puerto Ayacucho Military Garrison, Amazonas State. Command headquarters obliterated. Barracks adjacent, engulfed in fire from ruptured fuel lines. Sixth impact, Ciudad Bolivar Border Operations Hub. The missile struck during shift change, maximum personnel density. Casualties, 34 Kia, 41 WIA. 6 command centers hit in 90 seconds. The Venezuelan military command structure was being systematically erased. Share this with anyone who thinks actions don't have consequences. 1:08 p.m. The B-1B Lancers, Hammer 1 and Hammer 2, still 240 miles outside Venezuelan airspace, released their payloads. 48 AGM-158 JSSMR cruise missiles. Extended range, 575 miles. Stealth profile. Terrain following flight paths. GPS and infrared terminal guidance. Each missile cost $1.4 million. Each command center was priceless to Maduro's grip on power. Targets: the remaining 4 Venezuelan command installations. Maracay Intelligence Coordination Center. 8 JASSMs assigned. Valencia Regional Command Post. 7 missiles. Caracas Southern District Command Annex. 12 JASSMs. Merida Mountain Command Center. 6 missiles. Launch sequence complete by 1:09 p.m. Time to impact, 14 minutes. Venezuelan air defense had no chance. S-125 and S-75 SAM systems, Soviet-era relics from the 1960s, were never designed to counter modern cruise missiles. Radar operators detected scattered contacts but couldn't achieve fire control lock. Missiles were too low, too fast, too small. At 1:11 p.m., 2 Venezuelan Su-30 Mk2 fighters scrambled from Barquisimeto Air Base. Desperate attempt to intercept something, anything. They never reached engagement range. Venom 3, still orbiting at 34,000 feet, detected the Su-30s climbing through 9,000 feet. Captain Brianna Cole transmitted, "Venom Flight, 2 bandits bearing 155 Angels 9 hostile. Engaging." She launched 2 AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles. At 1:12 p.m., both Su-30s exploded. Debris rained into the Cordillera de la Costa Mountains. Both pilots killed. No ejection. Venezuelan air power. Neutralized. 1:14 p.m. Inside Miraflores Presidential Palace, Caracas, Nicolas Maduro received fragmented reports. Command centers weren't responding. Explosions across 5 states. American aircraft operating freely in Venezuelan airspace. Military communications collapsing. Defense Minister General Vladimir Pedrino Lopez attempted damage assessment. Lines dead. Satellite phones unreliable. Couriers dispatched but roads blocked by fleeing military convoys. Maduro turned to his Russian and Cuban advisors. Both had the same answer: "You're on your own." Moscow wasn't risking confrontation with Washington over Venezuela. Havana had no capability to intervene. The regime was alone. At 1:16 p.m., Venezuelan state television interrupted programming. A shaken anchor read, "The Bolivarian Republic is under unprovoked imperialist aggression. Our valiant armed forces are heroically defending the sovereignty of the nation. The people must remain calm." No mention of casualties. No acknowledgement of destroyed command centers. No admission that Venezuela's military coordination had just been decapitated. But Venezuelans knew. Social media flooded with videos: explosions in Barinas, fires in Maracay, smoke plumes over San Cristobal. Civilian eyewitnesses filming cruise missiles overhead. The government could deny. The evidence couldn't be hidden. 1:18 p.m. The JSSM cruise missiles reached their targets. Maracay Intelligence Coordination Center, 3-story fortified structure housing signals intelligence operations, regime surveillance apparatus and coordination with Cuban advisors, took 8 direct hits within 20 seconds. The building didn't collapse, it vaporized. Walls blew outward. Roof pancaked down. Interior floors compressed into rubble. Cuban intelligence officers stationed there, 11 confirmed dead. Venezuelan personnel, 39 Kia, estimated 28 WIA buried in debris. Valencia Regional Command Post, 7 JASSMs. The facility, responsible for coordinating military operations across Carabobo State, was obliterated. Operations Center, destroyed. Communications equipment, shredded. Backup command post 800 meters away, also struck. Senior officers killed, 9. Total casualties, 41 Kia, 47 WIA. Merida Mountain Command Center, built into a hillside, designed to survive conventional bombing, took 6 JSSM impacts. The first 4 missiles cratered access roads and destroyed surface antennas. The 5th penetrated a ventilation shaft and detonated inside. The 6th collapsed the primary entrance. The mountain facility became a tomb. Personnel trapped inside, 27. Rescue attempts would find only bodies. Drop obliterated if you understand what total decapitation looks like. 1:21 p.m. The final target was the most significant. Caracas Southern District Command Annex, Nerve Center for Regime Protection Forces, Internal Security Operations and Suppression of Domestic Dissent. The facility coordinated Maduro's personal guard, monitored opposition figures and directed crackdowns on protesters. 12 JSSM cruise missiles inbound. The installation was fortified, reinforced concrete, underground bunkers, redundant communications. Designed to survive anything short of nuclear strike. It didn't survive precision conventional bombardment. At 1:22 p.m., the first 3 missiles hit simultaneously, triangulated strikes on the main headquarters building. The structure's center collapsed inward. Upper floors dropped onto lower levels. 4 seconds later, 3 more impacts on the eastern bunker complex. Blast doors buckled. Interior spaces compressed. Personnel inside, crushed or asphyxiated. 6 seconds after that, the final 6 missiles struck vehicle depots, fuel storage, communications towers, and backup command posts scattered across the compound. The entire facility, spanning 14 acres, was reduced to burning wreckage in 18 seconds. Casualties: 52 Kia confirmed, 67 WIA, 14 missing, presumed dead. Regime protection apparatus destroyed. At 1:23 p.m., Captain Voss transmitted from JSOC Forward Command, all strike packages Warhammer. Scorpion protocol complete. All primary targets destroyed. Secondary BDA confirms mission kill on 10 command centers. RTB authorized. Return to base. The retaliation was over. Total strike duration, 40 minutes. But the consequences were just beginning. 1:26 p.m. Venezuelan military communications were in total disarray. Field commanders had no orders. Units operated autonomously, or not at all. Border garrisons withdrew without authorization. Soldiers deserted. Officers fled. The ambush that started at 12:37 p.m. had triggered a cascade that decapitated the entire command structure by 1:23 p.m. 46 minutes. 10 command centers. Over 340 military personnel killed. Hundreds more wounded. Communications infrastructure shattered. Air defenses neutralized. Fighter aircraft destroyed. And on the American side, 0 casualties post-extraction. 0 aircraft lost. 2 SEALs wounded, both stable and recovering. The asymmetry was staggering. 1:31 p.m. Geopolitical shockwaves radiated instantly. In Havana, the Cuban government issued a statement condemning disproportionate imperialist aggression, but conspicuously offered no military support. Cuban advisors in Venezuela went silent. No martyrdom. No escalation. In Moscow, the Kremlin released a brief condemnation calling for de-escalation and dialogue. No threats. No promises. Russian military advisors embedded with Venezuelan forces received quiet orders. Stay out of it. In Beijing, Chinese state media covered the incident with minimal detail before moving to other topics. No solidarity beyond rhetoric. In Brasilia, the Brazilian government expressed concern over regional stability, but privately welcomed the weakening of Maduro's regime. Colombian president thanked Washington through back channels. Across Latin America, capitals recalculated. Governments hedging between Washington and Caracas shifted decisively toward the former. The message was unmistakable: attack U.S. forces, face obliteration. In Washington, the Pentagon briefed congressional leadership. Secretary of Defense Patricia Hammond stated, proportional response was executed in defense of U.S. personnel under deliberate attack. Command infrastructure authorizing hostile action was neutralized. Further escalation rests entirely with the Venezuelan government. Translation: we'll do it again if you test us. 1:38 p.m. Maduro convened emergency meeting with remaining military leadership. Defense Minister Pedrino Lopez presented the damage: 10 command centers destroyed, over 600 casualties, communications crippled, no capability to coordinate national defense. Maduro faced reality. Escalation meant total destruction of Venezuela's military. De-escalation meant survival. At 1:42 p.m., Venezuela transmitted a message through Swiss diplomatic channels to Washington. The Bolivarian Republic seeks immediate cessation of hostilities. Venezuelan forces will withdraw from all disputed border areas. No further operations will be conducted against U.S. interests or personnel. Washington's response, delivered at 1:54 p.m., acknowledged. Any resumption of hostile action will result in expanded targeting, including strategic infrastructure and leadership command nodes. The threat was explicit. Next time, Miraflores Palace itself was on the list. Maduro understood. The crisis ended not with negotiation but capitulation. Strategic implications. What happened between 12:37 p.m. and 1:29 p.m. on January 12, 2026, wasn't just a tactical response. It was a strategic demonstration. For years, adversaries tested American resolve. Would Washington retaliate decisively when forces were attacked in ambiguous circumstances, inside or near hostile territory far from public view, where plausible deniability existed? Venezuela provided the answer. The response wasn't proportional in traditional terms. 8 SEALs ambushed by 40 soldiers didn't trigger an equivalent counterstrike. It triggered systematic destruction of the entire command apparatus that authorized the attack. The calculus was clear: The cost of engaging U.S. Special Operations Forces infinitely exceeded any benefit. This wasn't revenge. It was deterrence through demonstrated capability. Operational lessons. First, pre-authorization protocols enable speed. Scorpion Protocol wasn't improvised during crisis. It was planned, rehearsed, updated quarterly. Target folders existed for 10 Venezuelan command centers. Weapons were pre-assigned. Assets were positioned within range. Authorization came within 6 minutes of initial contact. From ambush to first strike, 25 minutes. That speed was only possible through preparation. Second, decapitation strikes shatter coherence. Venezuela's military didn't lack manpower or equipment. It lacked command. Orders stopped flowing at 1:05 p.m. Coordination ceased at 1:18 p.m. By 1:23 p.m., the Venezuelan military existed as isolated units with no strategic direction. Remove the brain, the body stops. Third, precision negates defenses. Venezuela had air defense systems, fighters, hardened bunkers. None mattered. Cruise missiles evaded detection. Dams struck with 10-foot accuracy. Anti-radiation missiles killed radar before SAMs could fire. Overwhelming precision defeated layered defenses. Fourth, air dominance is decisive. AC-130 gunships annihilated the ambush force. F-15Es struck command centers unopposed. Apaches hunted retreating forces. Venezuelan aircraft that attempted intercept were destroyed instantly. Total air superiority turned a ground ambush into a rout in 4 minutes. Fifth, integrated kill chains compressed timelines. From SEAL beacon activation to Reaper drone feed to JSOC targeting to missile launch to impact. 15 minutes. Sensors, decision makers, and shooters operated as one system. That integration is the asymmetric advantage. Deterrence calculus. Every U.S. adversary watched what happened to Venezuela. They saw 8 Americans ambushed. They saw 52 minutes pass. They saw 10 command centers destroyed, over 600 military personnel killed, and a nation's defense apparatus decapitated. They noted the response wasn't delayed by political debate, legal review, or fear of escalation. Authorization was immediate. Execution was overwhelming. They observed that hardened facilities, air defenses, and strategic depth provided no protection. Venezuela's command centers were as vulnerable as undefended tents. Most importantly, they recognized the implicit threat. This is what happens when you cross the line with special operators conducting limited reconnaissance. Imagine what happens if you target U.S. bases, ships, or cities. The deterrent value of the Venezuela strike extended far beyond Caracas. Tehran, Pyongyang, and Beijing all received the message. If your communities need to understand what deterrence looks like, share this everywhere. Escalation risk. But the operation carried immense risk. If one SEAL had been captured and paraded on Venezuelan television, domestic pressure for broader intervention would have been overwhelming. If Venezuelan civilian casualties had been significant, if a cruise missile had struck a hospital or school through targeting error, international condemnation would have isolated Washington. If Cuba or Russia had provided active military support, the conflict could have widened. If Maduro had ordered retaliatory strikes against Colombia, a regional war could have erupted. The margin between controlled retaliation and uncontrolled escalation was razor thin. Success required perfect intelligence, perfect execution, perfect weaponeering. One mistake, one errant missile, one miscalculated strike, one failure in extraction, could have changed everything. The operation succeeded. But it could have failed. And failure would have been catastrophic. That's the warning embedded in this story. Precision strike capabilities enable decisive responses. But they also create temptation to use force when diplomacy might still work. Venezuela attacked U.S. forces. Retaliation was justified. But the speed and scale of that retaliation left no room for off-ramps, no space for negotiation, no chance for Maduro to back down before destruction rained down. The world is safer when adversaries fear consequences. But it's also more dangerous when conflicts escalate in minutes rather than days. Balancing those realities defines modern warfare. Final scoreboard. Venezuelan losses. Command centers destroyed, 10. Military personnel Kia, 343. Military personnel WIA, 412. Aircraft destroyed, 2 Su-30 Mk2 fighters. Armored vehicles destroyed, 3 BTR-80 APCs. Support vehicles destroyed, 6. Air defense systems destroyed, 4. Communications nodes destroyed, 9. Senior officers Kia, 27. U.S. losses. Personnel Kia, 0. Personnel WIA, 2 recovered, stable. Aircraft lost, 0. Munitions expended, 84, DAMs, JASSMs, Tomahawks, Hellfires, HARMs, 105mm rounds. Duration, 52 minutes from initial ambush to final strike. Final timeline, 12:37 p.m., Venezuelan forces ambush Grizzly Team. 8 SEALs under fire. 12:40 p.m., Grizzly Team requests close air support. 12:43 p.m., Scorpion Protocol authorized. U.S. strike packages activate. 12:45 p.m., AC-130 gunships engage. Ambush force destroyed. 12:53 p.m., Tomahawk cruise missiles launch. 12:56 p.m., Grizzly Team extracted. All personnel recovered. 1:02 p.m., first DAM strike Venezuelan command centers. 1:05 p.m., Tomahawks impact 6 targets. 1:08 p.m., B-1BS release JSSM cruise missiles. 1:18 p.m., JASSMs obliterate remaining command centers. 1:23 p.m., final target destroyed. All 10 command centers neutralized. 1:29 p.m., mission complete. 52 minutes. 10 command centers erased. Venezuelan military command structure decapitated. Over 750 casualties. Communications shattered. Defense coordination eliminated. Venezuela ordered an ambush on 8 Americans. 52 minutes later, the regime's ability to command its military ceased to exist. The lesson is permanent. You don't ambush U.S. special operators and survive as a functioning military. Hit that like button. Comment what you think this teaches other adversaries. And subscribe, because the next operation is already developing, and you'll want to see what happens when the next regime tests these rules. 12:37 p.m. they thought they had the advantage. 1:29 p.m. they learned the cost of that mistake.